Ouija. Talking to spirits can be dangerous. Have you ever stopped to think that that innocent board, the one you can find in toy stores, might actually be a direct channel to something you were never meant to call? That's right. Some people thought it was just curiosity, but ended up awakening things that even science can't explain. And the scariest part is not what shows up, it's what stays. We live in an age where everything has turned into entertainment, even talking to the dead. But what if I told you that many of the voices answering through the Ouija board were never even human to begin with? Sounds like an exaggeration, right? But once you hear the real cases, the hidden studies, and the warning signs people ignored, you might think twice before playing with the unseen. Because the danger doesn't begin when the planchette moves. It begins when you believe you're in control. That's when it all starts to unravel. Today, you'll understand why so many experts say you should never touch it. You'll discover the rituals that failed, the contacts that led to possession, and what really happens when something from the other side decides to stay. The door that should never be opened, how the Ouija board works as a channel between worlds, and why some connections can never be undone. Some people think the Ouija board is just a harmless game, like one you'd find on a toy store shelf. But those who've actually messed with it know. That thing is a door. A symbolic, energetic, spiritual door, call it what you will. And the most dangerous detail? Once opened, it doesn't always promise a return trip. It's like poking an invisible hornet's nest. You may not see the swarm, but it definitely knows you poked. Most people only realize what they've done when it's already too late. At first glance, everything feels harmless. Low lights, friends laughing, fingers lightly on the planchette. But what few understand is that the Ouija doesn't operate through physical force. It works through intention. It's like tuning into a frequency. When you turn that dial, something hears you. And what answers isn't always what you were hoping for. Now imagine the spirit that shows up, or rather, what presents itself as a spirit, has taken your curiosity as an invitation. A permission slip. And when that happens, my friend, opening that door is the easy part. The hard part is closing it. Many people say that even after putting the board away, they feel something still there. Nightmares, whispers, shadows, like something stayed behind. Something dangerous. That's where the real problem starts. Not everyone knows how to deal with what they've summoned. It's not like turning off the TV. What's activated energetically during that session might create a bond. And that bond doesn't always break with a prayer or a salt circle. Some people need spiritual help, others psychological, because the impact goes beyond the board. It hits the body, the mind, the soul. That's why it's so important to understand. The Ouija isn't just a piece of wood with letters on it. It's a ritual disguised as a pastime. And like any ritual, it has consequences. Ever heard the saying, some doors only open from the inside? Well, the real issue is when you open one and whatever's on the other side decides to come out. And then who's going to close it? There's this girl who once told me her story. Thought it was just a fun Friday night game with friends. But that night something answered, and, according to her, it never stopped. It started with whispers in the dark. Then furniture moving. Her mother even heard footsteps when she was home alone. And the worst part? It all began with just curiosity. And by the time you think you're still in control, it's already too late. The connection has been made. It's like saving someone's number in your phone, and now they know how to call you back. Sound a bit dramatic? Wait until you hear what's next. Because not every voice that picks up is a spirit like you imagine. Spirits or disguised entities. The dark truth about who's really responding through the board, and why many believe they're not human souls at all. Not everything that glows is gold. And not everything answering through the Ouija board is a human spirit. That's one of the biggest traps in this kind of practice. Sometimes what shows up as grandma, a child, or even an angel is actually something else entirely, and not always with good intentions. These entities are masters of disguise. And the worst part? They know exactly what you want to hear. They come in gently, use familiar names, tell emotional stories. But behind that friendly mask might be something far more dangerous. The problem is, once you're emotionally hooked, your guard drops. And that's when things shift. These beings often feed off your attention, your energy, your emotional vulnerability. Many spiritual specialists, from spiritists to occultists, warn that what answers on the Ouija could be an opportunistic intelligence. Something pretending to be a deceased soul but acting like a parasite. Ever heard of tricksters? They're entities that live to deceive. And when they sense someone open the door out of curiosity or desperation, they move in. It's like picking up a call from an unknown number. The voice is sweet, the conversation is smooth, and before you know it, you're spilling your soul. Only this time, instead of losing money, you lose energy, sometimes even your peace. People start experiencing strange symptoms: chronic fatigue, mood swings, invasive thoughts. All of this beginning after what seemed like just a session. In one of the creepiest stories I've heard, a woman said she spent weeks talking to what claimed to be her deceased father. They cried together, healed old wounds. But then the tone changed. The messages turned aggressive. Until one night, she dreamt her father was trapped and begging for help. That's when she realized, who had she really been speaking to all along? Not every contact is malicious. But here's the thing. Do you really know who you're dealing with? The Ouija, for all its appearances, doesn't come with a verification badge. There's no way to confirm if it's truly a spirit. And once an entity notices that you believe everything it says, it gains power. Power to influence, to stay, and even to infiltrate your life. It's like letting someone with a mask into your home just because they smiled. We learn as kids not to talk to strangers on the street. But when it comes to the unseen world, that rule seems to vanish. And here's the scariest part. What happens when that stranger decides to stay? Real cases of terrifying contact. Documented accounts of sessions that ended in possession, mental disturbances, or even disappearances. It's one thing to hear rumors. It's something else entirely to dive into the stories of people who lived the terror firsthand. There are accounts that leave no room for doubt. Something happened. Ordinary people from different parts of the world describe disturbing consequences after Ouija sessions. And we're not just talking about chills or spooky noises. We're talking real disruption, physical, emotional, spiritual. One of the most well-known cases is of a girl named Stephanie, from a small town in Mexico. She joined a Ouija session with classmates. At first, it was all laughs and curiosity. But within a week, she started showing strange behavior, speaking unknown languages, having violent seizures, and saying he was inside her. Her family brought in priests, mediums, psychiatrists. None of them could help. In another case, in Romania, a young man named Andre vanished after playing with the board alone. The Ouija was left on the table, planchette pointing to the word, "Come." He was never seen again. Security footage showed him lighting a candle. And then nothing. No clues. It's as if he was pulled out of reality. The police still have no answers. And these aren't isolated stories. There's a growing number of people who, after using the Ouija, develop symptoms similar to mental illness. Some hear voices constantly. Others black out or lose chunks of time. One woman said she'd wake up with bruises and handprints on her skin, as if something held her down at night. And all of it started after a harmless game night. What's most chilling is how often the patterns repeat. First phase, curiosity. Second, contact. Third, imbalance. Some people try burning the board or throwing it away. But as some occultists say, once the connection is made, the board is just a relic. The real link stays in the energy, not the wood. That's why the danger doesn't vanish with the object. People forget that the Ouija isn't just a game, no matter how it's marketed. It acts like a key, and not every door it opens leads somewhere safe. One of the biggest mistakes people make is underestimating what's been activated. They think time or silence will fix everything. But there are entities that are patient. They wait, and they return. So what do you do when the contact sticks? When life starts feeling like a slow, silent horror movie? Some seek spiritual cleansing. Others need therapy. But there are those who say, depending on what you've brought in, not everything can be undone. And the question echoes like a whisper. Was it really just curiosity? Or did you call something that never intended to leave? What science can't explain, studies on the ideomotor effect versus the phenomena that defy all scientific logic. Science, as always, tries to bring logic to what feels mystical. In the case of the Ouija board, the most common explanation is the ideomotor effect, a psychological phenomenon where your body moves without conscious intention. In other words, no one is pushing the planchette on purpose. It's your brain acting behind the scenes. This theory makes sense until the board starts revealing names, dates, or languages no one present knows. Researchers have done experiments with blindfolded participants, and even then, the planchette moved with meaning. In some cases, it spelled out information none of the group members knew. How do you explain that? And what about when the board spells the name of someone who just died before anyone even knew? That's when science starts to stutter, because not everything fits inside a test tube. A study from the University of British Columbia showed people answered questions more accurately using a Ouija board than answering consciously, especially when blindfolded. Scientists suggested the unconscious mind knows more than we think. But what about sessions where voices are heard or physical manifestations occur? That's a whole different beast. Logic has its limits, and Ouija seems to enjoy crossing them. The problem is, when science can't explain something, many just dismiss it. They call it hallucination, hysteria, or coincidence. But what happens when coincidences start stacking up? The Ouija thrives in the gray area between psychology and the spiritual. And in that borderland, even science gets nervous. It's like the board knows exactly where the cracks in reality are. There's this story of a man who woke up with deep scratches on his back after a session. He went to doctors, ran tests, nothing. No logical explanation. Neither he nor his wife had nails long enough to cause that. The only thing that had changed that week? A long conversation with a spirit called Elijah, who claimed to be a guardian, or maybe something far more dangerous. Of course, not everyone will believe stories like this. Skeptics have their reasons. But denying something just because you don't understand it doesn't make it vanish. Science is a powerful tool, but it isn't omnipotent. And when the Ouija comes into play, it seems to unlock a part of reality that logic can't quite reach. Like it's tapping into a fracture between worlds. So when someone says it's just in your mind, the real question might be, what if the mind is the gateway? What if that's exactly how these entities connect with us? Maybe the real risk of the Ouija isn't the board itself, but what it awakens inside us. And with that thought comes an even more uncomfortable question. Is there any safe way to use this key? How to protect yourself, or never play at all? Protection rituals, warning signs, and why many spiritual experts recommend avoiding the Ouija board entirely. If there's one thing people who've dealt with Ouija learn quickly, it's this: protection is never too much. But the wisest move, honestly, don't start at all. Most spiritual guides, mediums, and energy workers say the same thing. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. Because in this game, ignorance can cost more than you're ready to pay. Much more. Now, if someone insists on stepping into that territory anyway, they need to know how to protect themselves. And no, it's not just about saying a quick prayer before starting. Real spiritual protection involves preparation, clear intention, emotional balance, and awareness. Some people draw a circle of salt around the board. Others light white candles, call in their spirit guides, and end with cleansing prayers. None of it guarantees safety, but it's the bare minimum. Here's a warning sign most people overlook. When the planchette starts moving on its own, no fingers. That's not cool. That's dangerous. Another, when the entity avoids questions or begins repeating strange patterns. Names, symbols, gibberish. If that happens, stop immediately. Thank the spirit and close the session. Never leave the game open. It may sound silly, but it's saved people from much worse. There's a ritual that many spiritualists recommend. After a session, take a cleansing bath with herbs like rue, rosemary, and guinea leaf. It clears your energetic field and helps dissolve any lingering ties. Also, make sure your space is clean, not just physically but spiritually. Burn Palo Santo, myrrh, or white sage. And don't forget, keeping your mind clean is part of the deal too. But here's the raw truth. The only truly effective protection against the risks of Ouija is not using it at all. Sounds simple, right? But human beings have this strange obsession with poking the unknown. Curiosity is natural, I get it. But some doors, once opened, don't close with a snap. They demand more than courage. They demand spiritual responsibility. So before you think, just once can't hurt, stop and reflect. Why do you want this? Are you seeking answers? Missing someone? Trying to fill an emptiness? Because sometimes what we call a spirit is really a reflection of our own emotional void. And parasitic entities love an open, unguarded heart. It's like leaving your front door unlocked in a dangerous neighborhood. The Ouija doesn't forgive naivety. It may seem like a simple conversation, but as we've seen, it can be the start of something much bigger and much darker. And now that you understand how it all begins, maybe the real question isn't how to protect yourself, but why open that door at all if you don't even know what might walk through it? Now tell me, after everything you've seen, do you still think the Ouija is just a game? Are you sure it's worth opening a door you might not be able to close? The spiritual world is real, and it doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. It simply is. And those who mess with it without preparation often don't walk away the same. So here's the big question: what will you do with this knowledge now? Will you brush it off and pretend none of this matters? Or will you finally start taking the unseen seriously? Maybe it's time to rethink a few games. Because when it comes to the spirit realm, curiosity can cost more than you're ready to pay. If this content opened your eyes even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment below and tell me, have you ever gone through something strange like this? And of course, if you want to keep exploring this hidden, mysterious universe with me, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. What's coming next? We'll shake everything you thought you knew.